HelloLeesh. Maybe most people won't know who this woman is from the get-go, but if you've been bored and stumbled across Anti-Gabbie Hannah content, it's likely you've seen at least one of her videos in passing. So yes, you caught me. I do not like Gabbie Hannah. I do not like the way she threatened children with a lawsuit, nor the way she promoted a scam when called out and told everybody that they should just manage their expectations instead of being annoyed she was shilling $10 makeup brushes instead of their advertised $50 worth to them. I do not like the way she accused Joey Graceffa and Daniel Prada of being fake friends and awful people when they slowly pushed her out of her life after she literally sabotaged their popular YouTube Red show by going full diva, as well as the way she dealt with so many other people like Jessie Smile, Trisha Paytas, etc., etc. You get the point. So if I lose you here, I understand. That's okay. But I just wanted to give the context because we are not talking about Gabbie Hannah. We will be talking about a Gabbie Hannah channel, HelloLeesh. So when hatred for Gabbie Hannah was back on the rise due to her throwing a fit about people like Rachel Oates, Oscar Wilde, some guy named Dom who wasn't the creep from the David Dobrik vlogs, I couldn't help my morbid curiosity and kept up with things, and eventually stumbled on HelloLeesh's channel. I liked her at first, and I really sympathized with her story. That was, in summary, she made a couple of critical videos and tweets, even responding to Gabbie, so Gabbie actually reached out to hash out their differences, which is a behavior we've seen from Gabbie before. She tries to get in good with drama channels in order to sway opinion, which is fair enough, I guess. And apparently Gabbie was such a nightmare to talk to, but eventually they sort of agreed to get along, I guess. However, later Gabbie went on a tirade about Leesh, not naming her, but citing things in a live stream or something that she was doing, giving specific information that pointed to Leesh, and saying things like she was a coward or misquoting the things that they said in their conversation to make Gabbie look like a good person, but this other girl who shall not be named is just an awful stan-turned critical person. And look at her, she's thirsting for my boyfriend, she's wanting all my friends to herself and saying how great I am, but she still makes this critical video and rude tweets thinking I'd never see it, and it proves she's two-faced and weak-willed. Leesh understandably got upset about this and texted Gabbie since they were in contact, but Gabbie ignored her until Leesh eventually said that she was going to address this stuff to her audience, since it was her audience in the first place who brought Gabbie shit-talking back to her. Then Gabbie went ballistic and roasted her, trying to get ahead of the curve, saying stuff like, "This is war," and apparently Leesh suffered their wrath and Gabbie sicked her fans on HelloLeesh. I felt bad for her because it seemed like she was really upset, and like a classic case of a bigger creator taking advantage of a smaller one to get more people on their side, while also having, you know, the perk of shitting on them to their audience to make themselves look like a better person. And when called out for it, Gabbie just hid behind the shield of, "I never said your name." And she just went so nuts, even though HelloLeesh thought they buried the hatchet. She wanted to have her cake and eat it too. I was kind of annoyed because I was like, wow, you worked that hard to win someone over, but then you also decide to brag about how spineless and jealous they are in front of your audience because now they're on your side and they probably won't talk back. I don't know. Apparently it's fair to her to vent using specifically identifiable information, but as long as it's not the name, nope, doesn't count. With that in mind, I thought Leesh's frustration and fixation on Gabbie was at least plausible and maybe somewhat justified, so I subscribed and I stuck around for a bit, but quickly started phasing out of her content. Her BAP, or basically a podcast, is just so boring. It's just her talking in circles, mostly about Gabbie Hannah, reading super chats, and again saying the exact same thing she said multiple times, telling people thank you because they like her dress or how she looks that day. I also felt personally annoyed at her mods because they were so quick to police anyone who accidentally called Trisha Paytas she instead of they. I 100% respect they-them pronouns, but many people who have been familiar with Trisha for years, similar to friends of theirs, might struggle with a pronoun switch, especially when Trisha went through no physical changes. Not only that, but some profiles of Trisha's online say she, her, they, them, like on TikTok, and has reiterated that they feel very flexible when it comes to gender, and as far as I've seen, they've never popped off at anybody for calling them she. And the last thing I have to say on this point is that Trisha refers to themselves as she in every video I've ever watched of theirs. Like, whenever Trisha is talking from another person's point of view, they always refer to themselves as she. So that leads me to believe that Trisha isn't as much of a stickler on they-them pronouns as much as HelloLeesh and her mods make it out to be. Like this massive offense if you dare forget they-them pronouns. They were so passive-aggressive in the chats, adding everyone saying, "You've been warned, don't you dare call Trisha she." Like, even when I and other people apologized, they still harped on and on, like, "Don't do it again." I was like, you people don't even know me. Calm the fuck down and stop assuming I'm a damn transphobe. So the fact you try to engage in a conversation, a respectful conversation, during HelloLeesh's live stream and automatically get called a bigot for messing up once, having to say over and over again sorry just because they keep jumping down everyone's throat so that every other message is turned into a pronoun debate, it's just so taxing and made it impossible for me to even attempt to stick around. Also, it feels like only people who are not really in her community will even like read or engage with your chats, because HelloLeesh certainly doesn't. She only seems to care about mod messages or super chats. But it really feels like if you say something, unless people know you, no one's gonna read it. And while we're on the subject of content, I didn't actually realize this till later, but HelloLeesh's videos are just not good at all. Unless something totally new happens with Gabbie Hanna, she literally will just talk about the same thing over and over again. Her videos are not engaging whatsoever, and there is no structure. She'll often just repeat things over and over again, and she'll circle back to something she mentioned a while ago and just ramble on and on without any end in sight, and go through tangents before suddenly you realize you're at the end of the video and you've learned nothing. They're filled with speculation and making criticism on Gabbie, even though she's made that exact same critique plenty of times before, and her videos feel more like ranting video journal entries rather than interesting content that adds something to the conversation. On a side note, I also want to say that HelloLeesh is unabashedly biased towards Trisha Paytas. When Trisha does something objectively bad, like make 50 videos on Ethan for one tweet he made saying he was sad that Trisha went on Keemstar's podcast, HelloLeesh is the sort of person to be like, well, both sides might have been wrong. And the whole internet knew that Trisha was in the wrong for leaving frenemies in such a dumb and sudden way. But HelloLeesh was like, oh no, it's totally valid. It just pissed me off. That's just a little nitpick. But I even found tweets back then of HelloLeesh ragging on Mysterious, even before most of the community watched Mysterious's video on how Trisha gives very conflicting childhood stories regarding sexual abuse she had as a child, and went with the petty page approach of never touch sexual assault, every victim is automatically telling the truth. It was just funny to me that she dealt with Trisha using the gentlest of kitty gloves, even when Trisha did horrible things. She would always just call it even. But she got unreasonably mad every time Gabbie Hanna did like the smallest thing. It just, you don't... Alright. But the thing that really got her into the first controversy that I'm aware of was when she got super mad at Edwin's generation when he had the gall to question Gabbie Hanna detractors. Once again, I'll reiterate that I cannot stand Gabbie Hanna personally, but that doesn't mean that I or anyone else has the right to disrespect or vilify a person just because they don't have the same exact stance as mine on the matter. Maybe when it comes to more important topics like, yeah, maybe thinking serial killers should be freed, or that every homeless person is just a worthless slacker who needs to pick themselves up by the bootstraps. To those people, I'll gladly say, fuck off, you're not worth my time. But for Gabbie fucking Hanna? No. If she's really not that important or influential, who the hell cares if you like her or if you don't? You're probably just ignorant or a stan if you think it needs to be one way or the other. But the thing about Edwin is that he really wasn't saying anything that outrageous. When I saw his tweet about him low-key calling Jessie Smiles a hypocrite for forgiving Alex James but not Gabbie Hanna, I cringed and thought that was a huge yikes. I still don't like that take because I know that people have the right to choose who they want to forgive based on their actions or what they perceive, because you can't police friendships of other people. But after getting on a live stream and arguing with Edwin and Nick Diorio, I came to the conclusion that neither of them were trying to be malicious in their questioning of Jessie Smiles and in their acceptance of Gabbie. There were good, legitimate points to the stream that I thought checked out, and there are real things in the commentary community that have honestly been fucked up on a whole new level, like freaking out because Gabbie apparently exploited a murder victim. That situation was blown out of proportion and objectively a bad take. But instead of HelloLeesh deciding to calm down and take a look at what Edwin believed, she threw a fit that he went after DAnime, who was the minor fan who Gabbie sent private messages to on Twitter telling her how awful Jessie Smiles was and divulging private information. Let me reiterate that Edwin did not randomly attack DAnime. I noticed that she tweeted about him, saying that she used to like him, but now he's defending Gabbie Hanna, after which she proceeded to make an accusation that he was laughing at a drawing that was parodying the death of George Floyd. If anything, DAnime took a shot at him, and obviously he responded and said it was wrong for her to go after him, and that her original tweet that started the whole Jessie Smiles drama up again had misinformation, like the fact that Jessie and Gabbie were not, in fact, best friends at the time Gabbie talked to Curtis Lepore. From there, HelloLeesh escalated the situation, saying that she would end his shit, and then made a laundry list of all the things she could find that he did wrong, all of which were bullshit. And when she couldn't catch him on any of that, and trust me, she tried, she accused him of being creepy because after she sent these weird, flirty, aggressive tweets saying things like, "I don't usually do this on the first date, but I guess you can say you convinced me," then she goes on to say things like, "Oh, it's so creepy. He called me mammy. Oh, how could he say that we were going to tango? I'm so offended." I was in disbelief that she drew so many ridiculous conclusions from Edwin responding to DAnime with the fact he was just defending himself because he did not mock George Floyd's death. And objectively, if we look at the tweet between Gabbie Hanna and what she DM'd DAnime, because it's not really an accurate tweet at all reflecting the situation. Not saying Gabbie had any right to DM her over it, but it was a bad tweet. The way HelloLeesh handled that situation was baffling, honestly. Not only did she flip the fuck out, threatening to end him over such a small correction he made to DAnime, she accused him of sending his audience to harass her just because he responded and she didn't have a platform like him, which means apparently he can't. She accused him of also being gross and sexist for using words like mammy, but he's Mexican, so I don't understand that one. Accused him of being violent for asking if she wanted to tango. She attacked his friends and called them incels. She tried to gather info when a follow account accused him of being a racist Nazi. She made a list of everything she thought he had done wrong on the internet to vilify him to her audience, and she got mad that he didn't agree that Gabbie Hanna was like Onision. She called him a panderer. She denied that DAnime ever spread any misinformation, where if you looked at her original tweet, there was plenty wrong with it. And overall, HelloLeesh was being a shady bitch. You can criticize Edwin for sure, but you don't have to stoop that low and be that dishonest to spin a narrative that makes you out to be the honest hero. Yes, at the end of the day, she said that she worked things out with him, but she only ever sort of apologized by quote tweeting an actual apology that DAnime made. Instead of issuing her own, she more or less just said, "I agree with this." But then later she even went on to shade him again on her Twitter, so I don't even know if she meant that in the first place. Next thing we'll talk about is what started HelloLeesh's true spiral downwards. She gained a lot of traction when she made this tweet that said, "Gabbie Hanna refers to the T/commentary channels as tabloids in very disdainful messages, but her new friends consist of Keemstar and the commentary bros, Nick, Augie, Boblax. Why do they get a pass compared to channels like Angelica Oles, Rachel Oates, Dustin Daly, Ready to Glare, etc." And that tweet got a lot of traction when, first of all, Nicholas Diorio responded to it, posting like one screenshot of like so many Gabbie Hanna videos that she's made, and also the fact that Keem made a Twitter video laughing at her and pointing out how dumb it was and had fun at her expense, reading it as "Gabbie Hanna hates women and LGBTQ people." Most people goofed on her after this, but she chose to fixate on things about how Keemstar insulted her by calling her a bitch, and says that, "Aw, Keem is so mean. He says that she wears glasses to look smart instead of actually being smart." All of this she did instead of, you know, engaging with the conversation. She handled the backlash pretty poorly and did not backtrack whatsoever in accusing Gabbie Hanna of being a woman/LGBTQ hater. Instead, she just shouted at people who came at her, saying, "Look, see, all Gabbie's new commentary friends are all straight white boys. Isn't that cringe? Look, that's all I pointed out, is that they're all straight white boys." And the funny thing is about HelloLeesh is that if a big channel comes at her, they are punching down. They are bullying. They're sending harassment her way. They aren't being fair. She didn't even at them. Why do they care so much what she has to say? She did this to Keemstar, she did this to Edwin, and anyone else who had a slightly bigger platform than her. Whenever they pointed out how ridiculous she was being, she hid behind the shield of, "Oh, I'm such a small channel, it's so mean." But if a small channel doesn't like her, or someone without a YouTube platform, no, they're stalkers. They need to be reported. Everyone, look at their Twitter and Instagram ads, and you need to let Steph know what's going on with these horrible people who are attacking me for no good reason. It's totally fine if she puts a smaller channel or individual on blast. But if it's done to her, how dare you? She cries when bigger channels criticize her and makes all sort of excuses why they shouldn't, but she'll also cry when her friends get responded to, no matter how wrong those friends' tweets are, because it doesn't matter the content because they are small and they are being harassed by hordes of your fans. And yet I literally watched a YouTube video yesterday of a creator called Erica Moans, I think. I could be mispronouncing her last name wrong. But that creator said that she literally left Twitter after she respectfully criticized some of HelloLeesh's tweets regarding Jimmy Snow, pointing out how they could be taken as ableist. Erica goes on to explain how she was harassed by HelloLeesh's Big Six, which consisted of her friends, mods, and patrons, who apparently cursed her out, calling her ignorant or even a fucking loser, according to the video Erica made. And she put off making that video and waited until Leesh was facing some heat before she felt safe, like her subscribers wouldn't all come for Erica's head. The difference between Leesh and other YouTubers is that she literally will send her fans to report accounts. Like, around the time I was following her on Instagram, there were 2 separate instances where she added an account and told her followers to go report a user. I'm not invalidating the reasons behind that because, of course, some of the messages and calls to actions that triggered HelloLeesh to sick her audience on them is vile. But she cannot hide behind being a massive creator while simultaneously using her audience the same way that she doesn't want larger creators to do towards her. After the shitstorm of people calling her out about her endless videos on Gabbie Hanna and her cringy tweets about assuming that Gabbie only likes straight white men, due to that, she wasted no time making a good portion of the commentary community her enemy. Therefore, it was no surprise when some people went digging and found some very sketchy things on a karaoke singing app of her singing lyrics that included the N-word and the F-slur. Of course, people were up in arms about it, because she was on Twitter saying things like Nick DiOrio is trash because he thinks it's okay to say the N-word in private, using that as a way to dunk on her opposition. Meanwhile, apparently she sang the N-word and rapped it and posted it to the internet, which I would say is a step beyond just being a dumb fuck in your private life. And people had a field day with it, because while she got so angry at people calling Trisha Paytas she, her pronouns, anyone who didn't use they, them pronouns were apparently transphobes, according to HelloLeesh. She got up in arms about the smallest potentially offensive things, but here she was behind the scenes saying disgusting slurs. I know it's in a song, and it's not my place to accept or deny such an apology, but what I took from the whole scenario is that she proved herself to be a massive hypocrite. The only thing I wanted her to do was to learn that she shouldn't throw stones from glass houses, and I still think that's something she needs to figure out. Don't be so hard on people for things you have done yourself, especially when she was at least in her late 20s when she did all those recordings, maybe even 30s. So she definitely knew better, and honestly, a whole bunch of people she criticizes on the internet are even younger than her. After that, a lot of questionable actions of hers came to light regarding things that she says, like how she has apparently a big autistic crush on Gabbie Hanna. But she hypocritically got mad at Jimmy Snow for using his own autism to shield himself from the criticism he was receiving of throwing his friendship with Rachel Oates under the bus in the name of defending Gabbie Hanna. How come HelloLeesh can defend her actions using autism, but people she has personal grudges against can't? She also was caught saying that she saw Gabbie Hanna as a concept, and that's why she kept covering her. Gabbie Hanna is just a concept that she's obsessed with. But as many people pointed out, that girl is not a concept. She is a person. She should be treated like a person and not like some interesting philosophical idea. It's unfair to dehumanize her like that, no matter how many awful things she might have done. But after the whole karaoke scandal, things were quiet for a while. People moved on, and even HelloLeesh took advice from people that maybe it was about time to stop mentioning Gabbie Hanna in every video. She seemed like she somewhat took the criticism to heart. But then things continued to go off the rails. I discovered that there were a couple of videos made by the Marzi Show, who, if you know from the Rebzilla priming video, he was the former friend of Rebzilla who got screwed over by him and called a stalker. The other video in question was made by a creator called Bambi Rambles, who I believe was a former friend of HelloLeesh, and I used to see them interact a few times on Twitter. Both of these videos called out the questionable nature of one of Leesh's relationships to a young girl who I believe is at least around 12 years old. Apparently, Leesh reached out to this young girl and literally asked her to contact her via Instagram or email in 2020. The minor was a Gabbie Hanna fan, and I guess they left an angry comment on one of Leesh's videos, to which Leesh kept commenting, responding to them that they were too young to use that sort of language, and then saying stuff like, "They're so beautiful and smart and charismatic," to which the minor said sorry for saying that, and then the minor asked for HelloLeesh to shout out their channel. Kind of a weird interaction and how strangely personal HelloLeesh got with them. And if you want to see the exact screenshot and details, check out those two creators I mentioned earlier. I'll link them in the description. The minor later goes on to say that she and Leesh are friends, and then they start to make comments supporting Leesh to someone calling her out, which is further encouraged by the fact that HelloLeesh specifically responds to one of the minor's comments, saying things like, "I am so proud of you, sweet one." They apparently also have contact on Twitter as well as Facebook, where HelloLeesh even knows their mom now and says things like, "It's so refreshing to know that these kids have a mom like you in their corner." Now, if there's one thing I learned on the internet, it's to avoid minors like the plague. I'm an adult, and while I think it's totally valid to have kids in your fan base, why would you go out of your way to befriend a 12-year-old? What do you, at 30 years old, have in common with a kid at that age? She's not even related to Leesh, and yet they say things like, "I love you" to each other. And as far as we know, that was just a random Gabbie Hanna fan before Leesh asked her to talk privately and then formed a personal relationship, successfully converting her to become a fan of HelloLeesh's instead. So the only thing that I am asking is, why would you ask a kid to email you and DM you on Instagram? Like, why would you do that? Why would you want to have private conversations with them? I'm not saying anything creepy is going on. It's just plain weird to try to get close to a 12-year-old. It's hilarious that you got so mad at Edwin for saying that Gabbie wasn't like Onision, and yet you befriending this young girl kind of gives me Onision vibes. A bit disturbing. That was a bad joke. I apologize, but the statement still stands that I still just find it plain weird to find a random internet minor and befriend them, and it absolutely couldn't be me. Once again, if you want receipts for these things, go check out those channels. I would rather not post them on my video just because I think it's a little bit strange and I really don't want to deal with all that bullshit. But after this all came to light through Bambi's Rambles video, HelloLeesh apparently made an angry Instagram story regarding it and apparently encouraged the young girl and her mother to comment on the video, basically exposing themselves as the one mentioned, even though their names were never given and honestly should remain private. I want to reiterate that I don't know any details of their private interactions or what contact they might have possibly had. I don't really think that's any of my business. All that I'm concerned about is the fact that you would reach out in general. So instead of HelloLeesh thinking to herself, yeah, I guess it's fair enough that maybe it's a little weird to befriend a 12-year-old and take her under my wing via internet, she decided to get the kid and the mom mad at people for calling this out for being strange and say that they are wrong. But I don't see how they're wrong because Bambi herself is a parent, as well as one other woman I saw who covered this situation pointed out how uncomfortable it would be if they discovered that their 12-year-old was being emailed or messaged regularly by a YouTube channel with thousands of subscribers. Like, that's a double whammy power imbalance. I don't doubt that the kid would want some influence as described in the first message of her asking HelloLeesh to shout out her channel. So that's just an extra thing to add on there. Not to mention, this all sort of continues to be a pattern I noticed from HelloLeesh, that she seems to befriend all of the anti-Gabbie people, and get in good graces with the ones that she perceived Gabbie to have wronged. She said that she was a friend of Jessie Smiles. She's also, apparently was, at least, a friend of Jen Dent. As well as, you know, D-Anime, the girl who was DM'd by Gabbie Hanna, and talked shit about Jessie, whose tweet started up a new storm of outrage at the time. Likely she couldn't influence them to hate Gabbie in the first place, but it just seems like she gathers a network through Gabbie, and that's pretty weird. The last and most recent controversy is what we're living in now. Mods, patrons, and people in her community are dropping out left and right, leaving statements on Twitter about how disappointed they are in HelloLeesh and how apparently she's been pretty shady behind the scenes and shitty to a few people. I'm not going to read out any of the statements, but I'm going to post the gist of a few. She apparently kicked some people out of her Discord and Patreon for criticizing her. There was allegedly a live stream where she was complaining about people in marginalized communities not being satisfied with her response to the whole N-word F-slur debacle she got herself into, and they thought that HelloLeesh was just prioritizing herself and getting support for herself rather than focusing on the people those words hurt. HelloLeesh apparently said things like, why can't there be support for both parties? Like, support for herself as well as the ones whose the words impact. Ah, the pity party. She gets mad at people in the chat, calling them mean, saying they're being unfair because she's been crying all day and she apologized before even caring about herself. And if you're here, you should be wanting to know what's going on with her because you care about her, because this is about her and not you. Basically, the whole point of this is to say that HelloLeesh was trying to frame people leaving the Discord as them not being able to handle the karaoke trauma. But for most people, there was a long series of concerns that they had been dealing with behind the scenes, and this was just the breaking point. A lot of her former community have said that she talks poorly behind people's backs, she trauma dumps on them, she might have some potential transphobia and microaggression issues, and a lot of parasocial relationship problems. I'm not going to go too in-depth about the statements, and I'll put up some screenshots, but you're always free to go looking for them if you just look up HelloLeesh on Twitter. What I did gather from the situation is that there is so much hypocrisy boiling over in the HelloLeesh sphere of influence. She yells at people who don't use they/them pronouns for Trisha Paytas, but has been accused of being transphobic in her own community? She drills into Gabbie Hanna for firing up a live stream talking about people who are aggravating her, but she does the exact same thing and complains about former patrons when her rule in a Discord says, don't talk about former Patreons. She says that Gabbie Hanna DMs people to try to get them in her corner, but has reached out to a 12-year-old Gabbie stan and somehow coincidentally ended up their friend, and now that minor is a part of the community that doesn't like Gabbie anymore. She berates people on Twitter for saying slurs, but she sings them in songs and posts them online. All the regular channels that I always saw in her live stream chat that she mentioned or talked to on Twitter, many of them have come out with statements against her, and if that doesn't say something massive about the community she's cultivated and the action she's had behind closed doors, I don't know what does. Personally, I have become very disenchanted with HelloLeesh, and while I used to have respect for her, at this point I would rather stay as far away from her as possible. I'm not telling anyone else to do so or to send anyone hate, but I thought presenting all this information together of all the controversies I believe she's been in that are semi-public was worth sharing to anyone who wanted to hear. Thank you for watching, subscribe if you would like, and we'll see when I make another video. Laters.